You can ignore the first three channels. They're just for my microphone, so that you can hear me when the music's playing. So what we have now is a bass drum. Okay. So you can control, I'll give you an example. You can control things within Koala, like the effects. If we hit play, do like filter sweeps and do some sort of gated reverb effect, or have right. So you can sort of move all the effects, and they all sound good, moving and modulated. And a lot of times we'll try to like resample that and try to do it, in a loop and stuff like that. But or maybe in AUM we'll hit record and record our entire song, and manually drag these things and try to get a good take. But sometimes we need it to do things on a more regular fashion. Like, we want something to fade in, and on the fourth measure start fading, and on the eighth measure reach its maximum, Or maybe we're trying to control lots of different things and we can't control them all at the same time because we don't have the manual dexterity. So there are definitely times when, if you could do it in some automated way, you might have more control over the situation. So that stuff is built in through MIDI control, and so the way you would do that, if we wanted to like move this filter, with some timing, we could use like some automated tool like an LFO. But Helium actually sort of does this as well. So if we were to create a MIDI channel and add in Helium and run it, go full screen, at the bottom left where it says controller, and where it says velocity, there's a list of control control lanes. And so there's some named ones, but then it starts to be CC0, and if I scroll to the bottom, you hit 127. So there's 128 channels plus a few of these named ones. That's a lot of things you can control, and actually you can reuse these. So if I just start scrolling through the named ones and just go to like ones that's not named, you can use all of these, even the ones that are named. I just, for my own sanity, I tend to start using the ones that are not named. So I usually start at around CC20. But other apps sometimes are aware of these other CCs and might be looking for data on it. So if you could avoid the conflict completely if you just stick to ones that don't have words on them. So in this case, I just chose CC20, right? And under where it says edit, there are tools. So you can draw. Draw will do like one vertical line. Paint will let me click and drag and draw shapes in. And then there's erase to erase them all. Can click and drag to erase. That's another thing you can do. You can click a line. The line is really useful if you want to, at the beginning of a certain measure, start at 0 and then go up to, at the end of the fourth measure. Maybe you want it to be full volume or full whatever you're going to apply it to. So that may be an example. And I did it from the beginning of the song, but like so this would be a slow fade in. But like, what if you instead wanted it maybe undo? Is it gonna let me undo? Go away. Mixer. You could have it start on the like fourth measure and go up in 3 measures time, be at full volume. So you can have that level of control, or you need to fade out at a certain measure or fade in at a certain measure, and you've got this timeline, so you could just do it anywhere. So like on the 35th measure, I want to fade out, and you have an incredible amount of control now with this timeline. I think for my example, I'm going to show you more the way I tend to use it, which is I zoom out a little, and I tend to do more like loop-based stuff. So if I hit sync, which will sync with host's timeline, and say loop, I can click and drag at the top and say an 8-bar loop. And the tool I didn't show you was curve. I do tend to do this quite a bit. Start at the top, and I'll go down, and on four measures in, I'll go down all the way to the bottom, and then if I click back up, drag back up, I can get back to full volume at the end of the 8th bar. So this will sort of do a LFO sort of thing. It starts at full, goes down, and dips and rises and falls. And I did one loop in 8 bars, but you can do smaller amounts, for instance, right? Every measure go up and down. You can control it and draw it in, which is pretty cool. This will go really fast. And maybe for our drums, that might be a cool effect. So let's maybe try this and see what this does. And the other thing is, I've got this one going pretty fast. We could actually create another CC channel. This is the beauty of it. You have an unlimited number here. I could do what I did before, which is, go slower, right? And if I wanted to, I could even do I could do as many as I want. Let's do another one, 23. Do four measures. So it's very musical though, because we can control, we can time with our measures and stuff and be in sync with our tempo. So if I was to close this out, well, if I hit play at this point, it's not routed to anything. So if I go to the routing at the top, I think I saw another problem too. Close, go back to helium. So I don't have this set for a loop, and I think let's go back to 21. That one is set for loop. Let's see 20. Also set for loop. So let's hit rewind, play, and go to our routing. And now we can see that port 1 is actually sending data, but it's not routed to anything. So if you want to start to use some of this cool functionality, you actually have to route it to MIDI control right here, which also you don't hear, but at least now AUM realizes that there's MIDI data being routed into AUM, so the AUM can now do stuff with it. So if we were to go to Koala, and the third icon at the top is the options, and it says MIDI controls. And this shows us a list of what things are MIDI controllable, which Marek has been kind enough to reveal MIDI control for all of these effects. So let's say we were to put it on filter, and we click learn, it sensed that there was data being sent out on CC1 or CC21 on channel 1. If we click it again, it switched to 20 because it's actually sending out data on 20, 21, and 22, I think. So if I keep clicking it, I might get 22. I'm not seeing it though. But we could choose 22. And it's the release. I think it's the one that's twice every 8 bars. It goes up and down. I think 21 was once every 8 bars. And I think 20 was really fast. Yeah, see, it's going up and down, but on the measures. So that's pretty interesting. You can do that for anything. So I'll just give you another example. If we do it for the other thing I should point out is I already had set this. Usually the default is to go the full range. And as you know, Marek's got that little snap at the 0, so it looks a little jittery here. It doesn't look smooth anymore. So for my example, I was just not going anywhere close to 0, and that's why it's showing us the full looping. And you can control the range on these things, which is cool. And I'll be honest, I use this little slider a lot. A lot. And we can start from the bottom and go up, or we could also start up and go down. So we can sort of reverse it, which is really handy, really, really handy. So let's just, for argument's sake, do like crush and do the same thing. We'll do learn. Now I already set this, so again, it's defaulting to a smaller range, but normally it would be 0 to 1 like it is now. And if I was to close this, you'll see it's going the full range of crush now. I personally find that the top range of crush sounds kind of too crunchy, so let's go back to crush and don't let it go all the way to the top. And I think it's doing that snappy thing again. It's like once it hits 0, it's snapping. So if we do like a little less of a range, it probably won't flash like that anymore. It isn't. So that's pretty interesting, I think, in itself. So we got one that's going slow, one that's going fast. I can close this out. But and I'm showing you in Koala. I think that's really useful because we're all like Koala heads. But like, what if we actually had like this file has got a snare drum, but it's set for channel 2, so we don't hear it. But if I create another bus instance, multi-bus instance of Koala, we'll hear it, which sounds fine. Let's lower the volume on it a little. And if I add an effect to this, like maybe a reverb. Oh, let's do this delay. It'd be pretty cool. So the delay is currently not synced. Let's sync it so that it's a little more musical. And let's mess with some of this. That sounds pretty cool. So if this was moved in time of the song, that might sound cool. And maybe the feedback. That's a pretty cool effect too. So what if these things were to move with the music? So if we were to click on the little settings and go to, well, this is interesting. We could go through this huge list, right? Or what we could do is click this little icon on the top of this MIDI learn button, and it turns blue and starts flashing. If you click on anything in the app now, if it's MIDI controllable, because not every developer has revealed everything to be MIDI controllable, but in this case it found it. It found the control that I clicked, and it's saying, hey, you want to control the delay sync ratio, and you can click learn, and it did 20, which I think was the fast one, right? What if we do maybe a slower one for that? And click done. So again, it's doing the full range, which maybe doesn't sound great. Let's try changing the range on that. So maybe a small range. So it's maybe jumping between like 1 or 2 values. So I think it's jumping between 3 values. But it's still doing it on a beat. So it still sounds interesting. It doesn't necessarily sound bad. And let's do the feedback and see what that sounds like. So again, I could go through the whole list, or I could just click the MIDI learn button and then drag feedback, and it finds it for me. And so here again, hit learn, and maybe this one will do low. No, this is doing twice every beat. And I think that sounds cool, but the feedback is so high, it's kind of crazy. What if, let's see what the other options are. Let's try 21. That's even slower. Let's try the fast one. The wrong thing here. That's funny. Sorry. I'm controlling the delay thing. The feedback. to hit all the way at 125. Let's try a smaller range, and maybe not all the way to the bottom. Done. That does sound cool. I don't know. Keep going to delete things. I gotta get feedback. That definitely sounds cool. Let's try. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And that's a good example of like many things within the app are controllable, right? And I was showing you with a loop, using helium as a loop. But if we just didn't loop it, we could say, like I showed you before, you could say like at a certain measure begin doing this, and then at that measure do that. It can be all timed based on a timeline, and this gives you a timeline which AUM doesn't have. So helium does serve a lot of purpose. You can have notes play, but you could also have knobs move, right? And you could, AUM is MIDI controllable. If you click on the name on the bottom of a fader, like channel 6, and click on the icon, you can go to channel control and you can change the volume. You can say learn on this. Right? And the volume is now controlled by working, I think, because the other stuff is so. Oh, no. There you go. It's because it's a timeline. It's not stopping. It's not looping anymore. So at the 8th bar, it's going to stop moving, right? It's going to be a full volume. And now it's going to stay at full volume for the rest of the song. And we didn't actually see that, so if I rewind and hit play, we should see the volume going up and down. And the reason why it's not going all the way to the top is because I set it to stop at 34. And then start to feel it at the full range. So I think that starts to give you a sense, like between loop, very often I'll have 2 instances of helium. I'll have one that's a timeline, one that's a timeline that doesn't loop, and then I'll have one that is looped. Just know that if you're routing 2 different helium sessions, both to MIDI control, they're going to conflict with each other. You actually have to set them for different channels. And I suppose if you ever want to do that, let me know, but it gets even more complicated. So here it's MIDI channel 1. You might want the other instance to send on MIDI channel 2, for instance, and then your instruments, the things you're trying to control, you're going to want to filter down the MIDI information. So you're specifically looking for, MIDI channel 1 or MIDI channel 2. But you can do this. This is an interesting strategy, doing some stuff looping and some stuff that's triggered via a timeline at the same time. All right, I think that's a lot. We covered a lot of ground, but this concept of being able to MIDI control stuff is everything that makes AUM awesome. I mean, like, AUM is so much more interesting when you've got knobs and things moving all on their own, and you've controlled it, and you can specify and dial in how much of an effect you want, you know. So, all right, talk to you later.